Mario Hemsley here for Pack Stereo TV, the local zone, the LZ, out in the community at Anaheim Convention Center for the Wizard World Comic-Con tournament, conference. Is it a tournament? It's not a tournament, it's a conference. Hey, it's wonderful, featuring the best of the comic book world. I've been walking around seeing Wonder Woman, Batman, and a whole bunch of other comic book heroes that I don't even recognize. But it's wonderful. We're getting ready to attend the panel right now. This is the panel is called the Way of the Nerd panel. This is for people trying to break into the whole world of writing for comic books. You're going to get a chance to hear from some of the real comic book veterans about their pearls for how to get into the industry, stay in the industry. We think you're going to like it. And don't forget, we'll be back here with a bunch of other recordings, capturing most of the event tomorrow. Tune in to Pack Stereo, giving you that exclusive internet television coverage of Comic-Con, Wizard World Comic-Con in Anaheim. I'm Mario Hemsley. This is Pack Stereo TV for the local zone.
Photo subject, jack of all trades, master of a few. Most of all, though, I do comedy. This is the planetalogica.com block here. We're going to be making some big announcements, talking to some big-time ballers, and just having a good time. If you guys in the back, you're kind of freaking me out back there. I'm not sure if I smell or if it's a vision thing, if you're nearsighted. But to each his own or her own. Hello. Thank you for waving at me at least, if you can see me. Now for the speech. I worked really hard on this last night, so I'd appreciate it if you didn't laugh. My fellow nerds, if you're like me, you stayed up till 5 in the morning last night, drinking Coors Light and watching two beautiful strangers get married. Sweet. But if you're also like me, you live every day doing what you love, and as if every breath you take might be your last. We're here today because we are passionate people, but we all must search for ways to take that passion out here and bring it in here. If you have $1 million, nay, $1 billion idea, how do you take it to the right people? How do you create your own destiny? How do you take advantage of the hundreds of industry professionals here this weekend? Joining us today is a man who's accomplished his goals and lived out his dreams. His new book, The Way of the Nerd, Practical Advice for Impractical People, can show you how to create a career out of doing what you love. Ladies and gentlemen, reading a segment from his new book, author, writer, director, crime scene investigator, marketing guru, and co-founder of planetalogica.com, the world's largest artist agency, and I'm not afraid to say, my friend, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Ken Goldstein.
I'm so shy behind the mic, so I hope this sounds okay. So I'm gonna read a section from the book. Can you guys hear me okay? Yeah. I'm gonna read a quick one, and I was trying to find something in this book, The Way of the Nerd, which comes out in May. So you're all, this is sort of like my unofficial book launch party tonight, so thank you all for being here. Thanks to the LA Film School and those guys back there for putting on a concert in my honor for this book tonight, and for May for being here. Anyway, so I'm going to read a quick section of the book. I was trying to find something in the book that would be applicable to Comic-Con, and so I'm going to read you this story. Now, the story kind of picks up in the book after I graduated college in 1990. I was going to college in upstate New York. So I had a girlfriend that was going to school in California, and I was on my way to visit her, so this is where the story starts. I had a girlfriend with a year left at Stanford who I wanted to see, but my real agenda for the trip to California was to meet George Lucas. At that time, Lucas was living outside San Francisco, and I was sure that he'd be impressed by how much I had accomplished during my time at Syracuse University. I figured we'd bond on the college overachiever thing, and he'd help me make my childhood dream come true by hiring me to work for Industrial Light and Magic, which is is his special effects company, for those 2 people who don't know what that is. I arrived on a Thursday evening. The next morning, I took the bus to San Rafael. Once we crossed the Golden Gate Bridge, the driver pulled off the side of the highway at Lucas Valley Road and told me I needed to walk the rest of the way. I'd read enough fan magazines to know that about a mile or so down the road was the magical kingdom of George Lucas, a place called Skywalker Ranch. This is in 1998, by the way, I think, 98 or 99, so I want to say I know there's a movie that came out about some kids getting onto Lucas Valley thing. This is about 20 years before. When I arrived, no one was around, so naturally I took this to mean that I should scale the security gate. As I strolled up, thank you, rock and roll guys. As I strolled up the road toward the main house, I envisioned myself hanging out with Lucas in his famed library, the one that I had read about in all the fan magazines. It was a beautiful vision. And as I rode in the back of the security car that caught me a few yards past the front gate, I held hope that George Lucas would call and have me come back to the library. I must have sat at the entrance to Lucas's property only a few minutes before a taxi pulled up. When it came back out, the driver asked me if I needed a lift, and I hopped in the back seat. "Do you know who was in the back of my cab?" He asks me. "Looked a bit like Grace Slick," I said. "Yeah, Grace fucking Slick. I couldn't believe it when she got in the cab," he said with fanboy excitement. "Last time I saw her in person was at Winterland in 1969 with the Jefferson Airplane and the Grateful Dead." "So," he continued, "are you guys working with her on something?" When people talk about being at the right place at the right time, this is exactly what they mean. Though I'd started the day's journey by heading to Skywalker Ranch, what I really wanted to find was ILM. But as Lucas kept its location a secret from the general public, I had no idea where it was, only that it was in the same general vicinity as the Skywalker Ranch. And there I was, in a cab, with a driver who clearly had been around the area for a while. All I had to do was mention a current ILM project and tell him to take me to the studio. "I don't know," I told him. "I've been so busy working on The Rocketeer. Been pretty out of the loop with all the goings-on around here." "Yeah," he replied, "Lucas keeps you guys busy. So where to then? Back to the studio?" So there's actually 2 parts to the whole being at the right place at the right time thing, and I know you shot Rocketeer, right? Yeah. There's actually 2 parts to the whole, this makes it a little uncomfortable. There's actually 2 parts to the whole being in the right place at the right time thing. There's your physical location, and then there's your preparedness. One of my career goals had always been to work in special effects at ILM, so I worked hard to get my hands on any publication that could give me some insight as to what was going on at the studio. Growing up in Illinois, I had no connection to the West Coast film industry. My only links were magazines like Starlog and Wizard, which featured behind-the-scenes looks into the making of films like Star Wars. I also got fanzines and subscribed to sci-fi and Hollywood newsletters, which back then arrived every few weeks in the mail. Can you imagine being at a time when you couldn't just go to the internet and check something? So basically, I subscribed to all these letters, and they would come in every couple weeks, and I'd sit by the mailbox. Anybody remember this? And wait for this stuff to get in. I was also a candy tester at the time, so every other week I get a box of candy in the mail, which you can't do through the internet. This is another disadvantage of the internet. Okay. Where am I? Okay, so when I found myself in the situation with the cab driver who could show me the way, I was able to quickly pull from my mind's memory bank and casually mention stuff I'd read about as if I had something to do with the production. We pulled into what looked like an abandoned strip mall a few miles away from where he picked me up. I waved as he left, and when he was out of sight, I quickly scanned the center for activity. There were a bunch of storefronts, but no customers. And that's when, through an open door, I saw Slimer from Ghostbusters. Has anybody been to ILM? Yeah? Anybody? Okay. Were you in ILM back in the 80s?
No, not in the 80s, like 99 when they were doing some.
Did they still have it in the strip mall?
No, it was like this weird, like stormtrooper. It was a weird kind of location.
Was it behind a Circuit City?
I can't remember. It was in San Francisco. I remember just being driven there. And then, I couldn't.
He's got a cooler life than I have, which you guys don't hear. I had to kind of sneak in. But at the time, he had it hidden behind an old abandoned Circuit City in a strip mall. So there were a bunch of storefronts but no customers, and then that's when, through an open door, I saw the bust of Slimer from Ghostbusters. Bingo. I walked in and discovered that ILM was hidden by the facade of an old strip mall. What happened next was nothing short of a miracle. The room I'd entered turned out to be the studio of one of the effects artists I knew the most about from reading Starlog magazine. When I walked in, he was just returning from the bathroom. By conversation's end, he let me shadow him for the rest of the day and do some assistant stuff for him on the set of The Rocketeer. Although it was an unpaid, unofficial afternoon, I left California a few days later, satisfied that I'd made an impression on a company I'd spent my entire life dreaming of working for. When I returned to Chicago, I used the experience to land a gig assisting a special effects artist in Chicago, and ended up getting into commercials. So I'm not going to read too much more, but basically I came back and I had this ILM experience, so suddenly everybody in Chicago was like, that's awesome. So I want to bring Jason back up. The book, The Way of the Nerd, is going to be available in May. You can get it online if you have thewayofthernerd.com. But let's get into this so we can bring up our second guests and rock on.
Okie dokie. Joining us on the panel today are, at the end, Joe Vox. Joe was a fine artist who made his way into the world of television. Go ahead. Applaud. In addition to having his artwork showcased around the world, he's also worked as a storyboard artist and director for The Family Guy. And in an upcoming episode, Joe's art's going to be featured in a scene where Brian trips out and gets lost in a painting. Is that right? Yeah. Which is pretty awesome. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Vox. John Schnepp is a writer, director, and producer at Titmouse Incorporated and his own company, Schnepp Zone. Is that right? Good research by me. John has recently worked on, I'm gonna mess this, I can't say this word for whatever reason.
Megacropolis.
All right, that's what it is. Metalocalypse? Yeah! Sounds good. Which airs on the Cartoon Network's Adult Swim. Also, he's directed Space Ghost Coast to Coast. And adding to his cool points are guest spots on Aqua Teen Hunger Force and his work directing episodes for the Upright Citizens Brigade, which is super cool. So John Schnepp, everybody. Peter Tangen is a world-renowned photographer, best known for his celebrity photos and epic movie posters. You've seen his photos on posters for The Rocketeer, Nightmare on Elm Street, Friday the 13th, Spider-Man 1, 2, and 3, Easy A, Batman Begins, Wedding Crashers, and Thor. Ladies and gentlemen, Peter Tangen. I think we are going to take questions later on, but I'll get things started for us as a moderator / comedian. Let's all have you guys talk about the first moment you realized what you wanted to do with your life. When was this? Either in childhood or adulthood or yesterday? When did you find that out?
We starting down here. All right. I'm still trying to figure it out. In fact, now that I've started doing what I want to do, I think I don't want to do it anymore. It's got to be a better way to make some money. But I was a kid who had two parents that were artists, and so I was always surrounded by fine art and taken to a lot of shows, galleries and stuff like that. But I loved my Star Wars, I loved my comic books, I loved monsters, and it took me about 17 years, maybe a junior in high school, to figure out that I also wanted to pursue a career in special effects, and I didn't get there, but I managed to go to Syracuse University, got a illustration degree there, and went back to New York, and my parents were like, you gotta hit the pavement, you know, you're gonna get work in these magazines and stuff like that. So I'm walking these streets of New York, hitting nothing. I had, 1 or 2 jobs, making nothing, spending all my money just to get into New York, and then getting home to realize I still live at home. But I got a hot tip from a buddy, Ralph Bakshi, who's kind of, if anybody knows his name, kind of an underground, dark figure in the world of animation. Had a small studio in New York, and I got his number and his address from a friend. And my dad's like, just go in, bring your book. He would drop me off. So I go in, and it's a small room, and Ralph's sitting amongst all these like cell vinyl paints. He's working on something back there. He says, hey, what do you want? And, hey, Mr. Bakshi, actually my voice was a little more like, hey, Mr. Bakshi, I'm an artist, I got some paintings I'd like to show you, do you have any work? And, let me see. So he took the time to look at my book, and, 20 minutes later, all right, I'm gonna give you a shot, kid, I'm gonna give you some background paintings, and he was working on some shorts for Hanna-Barbera, which became Cartoon Network, which has turned into, kind of a monster of its own, but he was doing these shorts that were crazy, and I did a couple background paintings. Next thing I know, I'm driving up to his house in upstate New York, and we're like best buddies, like Uncle Ralph taking care of this, little kid, and I'm buying smokes for him. I don't smoke, but it felt cool, to go out and buy smokes for this guy, And the ultimate treasure here was that he had a project that he was starting with HBO called Spicy City, which not many people know about, but it was a 6-part sci-fi series, kind of Blade Runner-esque, but done in the Bakshi style, which is kind of rubbery and cartoony. And he's, Vox, I need you to develop stuff for this, pitch into HBO. So I do some drawings, there are a couple other people I'm working with, and when it was all said and done, the show was sold to HBO, and he presented this offer. He said, I spent, 15, 20 years in California. I hate it. I fucking hate it. I'm not going back. But if you want to go, I'll put in a good word for you. So he put in a good word for you. Next thing I know, I'm coming out here in '96, dragging my fiance at the time, who's now my wife. I said, let's try it for 2 years. And it's been 16, 15, something like that. But that was my first big break. Somebody gave me a shot, and it all came out of like persistence, and my father giving me a good nudge. Get out of the car, take your book, get some work. And some nuts, But, since then I've worked on a lot of great stuff, and a lot of not so great stuff. But right now I'm on Family Guy, and that's presented some cool opportunities as well. And the show that was being referred to actually was supposed to air Sunday. All 3 episodes of Seth MacFarlane's, we got the Cleveland, the American Dad, and Family Guy are affected by a hurricane that's moving up the coast. And that was supposed to air Sunday, but because of all the tragedy going on down south, Fox has decided to air it later. So I've been firing out the word for the past week and a half, saying this Sunday, it's it. I've been working on this thing for a year. It's only 3 minutes long, but it's pure me. The studio was supportive, and it's Brian going on a weird little adventure in my kind of painting world. That's another side.
Show them what your painting style looks like.
Yeah, that's good.
We have a couple giveaways too, so.
But
So you want to explain what this is?
well, I've worked on the show for 7 years, and over the course of the 7 years, they do these like gallery events where they'd ask artists that are internal, and then artists that are kind of prominent to interpret the Family Guy characters and their own vision. So I've done this. I don't know how well you can see this, but it's kind of terrifying to do. And so this was just a little side project. And apparently this is touring the world right now. I'll never see it again. But I have prints. We work in a cool office where the writers and the artists work together. We don't necessarily sit in the same rooms, but we interact. They play video games at lunch. We laugh and do things as a group. Whereas on like The Simpsons, things like that, the writers and the artists don't even know each other. Maybe a name on the screen, that's about all you get. So we've had this nice relationship where the writers get to know the artists, and they get to know the artists outside of their own little, world of storyboarding or whatever you provide for the show. And the writers noticed my weird painting world and gave me an opportunity to kind of write and direct this weird little bit. So.
Joe, you also you do the Star Wars paintings, right?
Yeah, I'm a director now, so I mean it's just a lot of drawing.
Well, you did the Star Wars covers, right?
I did paint all 3 Star Wars Family Guy covers, which was quite an honor, but not the ones that are represented on the card that you guys are probably looking at. Those are digital. The Rock Band doesn't care; they're gone.
What about you, John? Any
John, bring him back. Here we go.
It can be your first break or any other anecdote you might feel like sharing.
Let's see. Well, I originally went to school to be a painter. I went to the Art Institute of Chicago, and then started learning about film and video and performance art, whatever, performance art. I just looked at it like weird one-person theater weirdness. You could just make stuff up and do cool stuff. It wasn't about like, being in the corner of a room crying and throwing rocks or peeing in a cup and smashing it. Sometimes it is, though. Performance is very wide open. Sticking your hands up your butt. So I went to school. Hey! The kids know what I'm talking about. Karen Finley. Look it up. I'm gonna get all snotty and elitist right now. So anyway, I was at this art school and getting into writing weird chemical poetry, taking a lot of drugs, doing cool weird art stuff. And then I graduated and learned you make zero money doing any of that kind of cool stuff. Started performing in front of a bunch of bands, and a bunch of the people I went to school with were doing these music videos, and they did the first two music videos for Ministry, which I don't know if you guys remember those very first two, like when Ministry went like metal. So, Jesus Built My Hot Rod, and then it was like Stigmata, a bunch of those that were on 120 minutes. And then this band called 9 Inch Nails, they were like, oh, we're gonna do this band from Cleveland. And so I was like, they were like, hey, can we shoot this video at your house? Because I had this really cool roof and a lot of weird, like kind of industrial shit. And I was like, yeah, whatever, give me $300. So I remember I was watching Seven Samurai, and like Trent Reznor and the other two dudes, the guy from Filter and some other dude, were like standing around. I was like, can you get out of my way, man? Like they were just walking into my living room. And I was kind of a dick about it, but later on hung out, and they were really nice. So if you see that video, it's called Down In It. It features my roof. And all the shots of him like he's trying to trip is actually like, just like not really dangerous. It was just like a second level, you know. So it's not dangerous at all, in case you guys ever really gave a fuck about that. But so anyway, I started working for my friends who were making a shit ton of money all of a sudden after that 9 Inch Nails video came out. Then they did Head Like a Hole, which I was there for, but it's like, you know, like the Terror Dome, where it's just, you can't see anybody but like shadows. But it was fun to watch him hang upside down for like 10 hours with videotape. It's this thing that people used to use back in the 90s. So I started working for them, and they were like, yo, Schnapp, didn't you like study like weird experimental animation and stuff like that? Why don't you like do, you know, they had this thing called a copy stand, where you would like manipulate objects and then take a frame and do something else, maybe draw something, splash some paint there. Kind of like this primitive kind of animation technique. And I was like, you know, I can actually also draw, so you want me to draw some shit, you know? And they're like, yeah, because these guys were all like, yeah, just film something, we'll turn it negative. It was that kind of, they were great guys. I'm just saying, it was like that kind of thing. So I started drawing, and they're like, hey dude, you know how to draw. Like not just like do like weird compositing stuff. So they gave me a job for a James Bond Jr. They were doing these commercials at Cartoon Network, and this was a few years later, after I'd built a bunch of like, you know, water, oil stuff, just to be in like a hump for $100 a day kind of stuff. And I acted. I'm in this Ozzy Osbourne video as a doctor. If you look it up, it's Infectious Grooves Therapy. You'll see my dumb ass 20 years ago. Like electrocuting Mike Muir behind Ozzy. So that's one of my most awesome things that I've ever done in my life. And the rest has been downhill. So I started directing cartoons, and I learned how to edit by making, I actually met Ken around that time period, like between 92, 93, 94. I was
one of my first jobs.
Yes, but I know him through one of my ex-girlfriends, Kim. I don't talk to her, but she's in North Carolina if you guys want to find her. She's
Doing real well.
no love, full love, whatever. She was cool. My new girlfriend's cooler. So smarter. Yeah, it's fucking smart, man. So anyway, I got into doing animation, and we ended up doing a bunch of different crazy stuff, and I moved here to California in like 98, and I remember, this is one good thing to remember. It was like, I don't want to stray off point too much. I was in line at, they used to have these animation conventions here in Pasadena, or not here, but in Pasadena. It was like the animation celebration. Any you guys ever go to those?
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Blank stares from the audience. What are you talking about? This was a long time ago, like 10 years ago. So I was in line, and I was trying to get into this party, and I knew I wasn't on the list. And as we get forward, closer and closer, I was like, I'm just gonna fucking lie to the people at the I was like, yeah. And so I got up there, I was like, yeah, it's Schnapp. It's right next to Spielberg, look it up. And they were like, you're not on the list. Or I was like, well, there's obviously some kind of crazy mistake. I'm working on all these cool things, so, you know, can I talk to your manager or whatever? And then they were like, well, we don't have a manager. I was like, look, how much is it to get in? And so they were like, it's $100 to get in. So I was like, I had just gone to the bank and had like a couple of $100 bills with me. And these guys who were behind me were kind of laughing, because I was just kind of making fun of the whole situation. So I was like, yo, I got lots of hundreds, you know, here, check it out. And so she like held it up and was like, yeah, like I was like, it's real, you know? So then everybody started laughing. So she was like, well, you and your friend can get in for half price. So we got in, went to the bar, and then these three guys came up behind me and were like, hey, you're really funny, right? So I was like, hi. And there were these three guys from Canada, and they called themselves the Membranes. There's these three dudes. And so I hung out with them for like an hour or so. We just cracked jokes and stuff. And they were there to pitch shows or whatever. That's what you do at the Pasadena Animation Celebration. You go there, get drunk, meet people, talk about shit, and go back home, do whatever else you were doing.
By the way, drugs and alcohol are not necessarily, necessary for achieving your dreams.
No, but they help.
They do help.
They help with failure a lot.
It's not necessary.
But you're gonna meet a lot of cool people at cool
Well, it tends
parties.
to relax things.
Yeah, it makes everybody happy.
Yeah.
So
It's social.
yeah, and fruit punch works too.
Yeah, totally. You don't have to drink. You just want to
Yeah.
have a
So anyway, I met these guys, and then a year later they called me, and I actually happened to have moved to LA, and they were like, "Hey, we're in LA too, and we just got a job. We took over Fox Family Channel, and we want you to make like 15 or 20 shows for us." So I was like, it was '98. I had just moved here, and I spent all my money moving here because I thought I was going to be working on Space Ghost, and then the Cartoon Network guys were like, "Yeah, we're going to do Space Ghost in Atlanta." And I was like, "Motherfuckers, just moved to LA." So I was like really flying back and forth for like 96 and 97. I lived in Chicago, but I was always working in either New York or LA. So I was like, fuck it, I'm moving to LA. And they were like, "Yo, permanent job, just come here." And no. So I was like, what the fuck? And then those dudes called. The membrane saved my ass.
The membrane.
And I came up
it
with
was
like,
hard work and talent.
well, yes.
Yeah.
I pitched 10 shows, and they narrowed it down to 4. Then I did animatics of those 4 shows, and then they picked 2 of them, and I made 2 of them. One of them stars Nick Offerman from Parks and Recreations. So I'm going to put all of them on my website in a month. So you'll have to come to schneppzone.com, plug. Schneppzone.com, plug. And so that's one of my stories of how you can like make things work.
Directing Metal Aqua.
This is the 7th year. I started working on it. I met Tommy's been a friend of mine for like 20 years. Tommy Blatcha, voice of Roxo. There we go. And he's just been a good friend of mine for all those years. And I met Brendan right when those guys came up with the idea, and they were like, "Hey, do you want to design these characters as a show we're pitching?" And that was in 2005. So I designed them, and then I did these 2 music videos for like I think it was like what was it, the Death Block theme song and this song called "Kill You." So,
Which you signed DVDs?
yeah, I got Brendan signed a regular DVD, and then this new technology DVD.
Nice. We'll take off some
Yeah. So they're both signed by Brendan and me, and give one to somebody who has a Blu-ray and one to somebody who doesn't. And then my dream came true, doing a comic book. So I'm a fucking super nerd. Been to Jack Circus since I've been 4 years old, reading my mom as well. And my dream was always to get into doing comics, but I went like so back-ass way to do it, like it's just so weird. And finally to do one, so I'm super excited, and I'm really happy with the way they came out. So giving away 2 of these too. So hopefully we do more of them. Yeah, I've been doing Metal Aqua for 7 years, almost the same amount of time as the Family Guy, and it's like we were just trading stories back and forth. It's like love, hate, but most of it's love. So it ends up working out. So.
Mr. Tane, I think it's your time to talk. You've been patiently waiting.
They're definitely going to help me get through this panel, though, I promise you that. I was taking pictures when I was 4 years old. I had a camera with me everywhere I went, and it wasn't filming it most of the time, but it was sort of like my prism that I looked through the world and protected the world from hurting me, I suppose. Growing up, I moved twice a year, sometimes at least once a year, and so I never really had the kind of relationship with people that you would expect to have if you stayed in one place at one time. And so I started looking at the world through this camera, and I really avoided people. There's pictures of trees, there was pictures of outhouses.
Incredibly social person. I don't see how that.
Right, yeah, I don't know how that happened. What happened was, I was using this as a barrier, basically, so I could look at the world without being looked at myself. And it was because I was walking around in a new neighborhood every 6 months. And then I got thrust into Santa photography when I was 16 years old. There's Santa, yeah. Yeah, the guy I worked for retired after 4 years. He was one of the most prolific Santa photography tycoons you've ever heard of. And so suddenly I figured out that my job was to take about 7,000 pictures of children every Christmas season. And from that point on, I just had the ability to walk up to anybody with a camera and make them smile. And I found out that I loved it. So I went to college and I spent a lot of time on the beach basically drinking with my friends and waiting tables. But I grew up with a camera in my hand when I was in college, and I came to Los Angeles, and I had the same Hollywood story almost every one of you would want to have here, which is toiling in obscurity, basically for a long time to become an overnight success. And it really had something to do with just being in the right place at the right time and being prepared for it. So I was there, sitting in a room with a bunch of people that were putting on something kind of like Live Aid. Do y'all know Live Aid? It was a big concert. It was everybody that had ever been in music was there performing. So they were doing this benefit. And I was there basically to manage the press pool. I was going to be organizing the press photographers who were going to be photographing the event on stage. And I just sort of meekly said, maybe I should do a photo studio in the back and photograph all of these amazing people. And they said, perfect, do it. I had no qualifications besides the fact that I knew how to take a picture, but I hadn't proven it to anybody yet. And so on the night of the event, I basically turned around at one point, and I had Stevie Wonder and Neil Young and Jackson Browne and Whoopi Goldberg and Country Joe McDonald and dozens and dozens of people standing in line waiting for me to photograph them. And so in one night, I built a portfolio that basically said that I can take pictures of famous people. Somehow different. I didn't have to put them on Santa's lap or anything like that. So I started toiling now in obscurity for a long time until finally I got lucky and got some jobs. And what I've discovered is that I've always loved taking pictures, and when I got those kids in front of me with Santa, I realized I really loved that. And now I do it, I pinch myself all the time, I can't believe that this is my job. I'd rather spend 20, 30 minutes or an hour and a half with Ron Perlman as Hellboy in Prague, in the sets, taking his picture, than spend all day photographing the guy at home, because I love the characters. I just think that the world that these people create, that they inhabit in these films, and to have the opportunity to really be there with them, to see these spaces and to see them just create these characters in front of me is just like the coolest job there is. So that's what I do, and I'm a lucky guy, and I work every day to stay lucky.
You brought a couple of his posters here too. His giveaway.
Yeah, I went into storage. I don't collect these anymore because, yeah.
Your most recent one is Thor, right?
Yeah, that's out right now. The Right.
Right.
They stopped collecting
Ooh,
posters.
they're big.
They don't make them anymore. I can just tell you what they are. You want to know what they are by seeing them?
Take it out.
Take it out. Okay, bring out the big one first.
While we're showing these two, let's talk a little, Peter, about the real-life superheroes project that you're also involved in.
Queen of the Damned. I grabbed these because I like these a lot.
You should
I've got
revisit
some
the
crap
Santa.
that I've done. I don't mention those movies, but I've definitely worked on my share of bad films. Go ahead, grab one. High School Musical, yeah. I didn't bring it.
Did they remake Silent Night, Deadly Night?
So,
I think anyone sitting in the back half will not be getting prizes. I think it's only for the. I'm tired of yelling, you know. No, we'll figure out a democratic way. Do you want to talk about, Peter, at all the real life superheroes project?
oh yeah, you guys know about, well, you know about these guys, right? These superheroes. You know there's real ones in the world, right? Have you heard about these guys? Real life superheroes, they're called. Raise your hand if you've heard of these guys. Right? I know all of them. I've met most of them. I know them, I got them on their phone, they're probably calling me right now. I basically learned about this community of people, and you might think they're crazy, but they're actually just trying to make the world a better place. And they create these costumes and characters. They go by names like Night Vigil and the Vigilante Spider and Phoenix Jones and Superhero and a bunch of others. Master Legend, you might have read about in Rolling Stone. And when I found out about them, I decided I wanted to make photographs of them. In fact, I decided to make movie posters of them. And so if you go on reallifesuperheroes.com, you'll see what we've done. I flew 20 of them to LA. We photographed them. I worked with a bunch of the best artists in the movie poster business. And wow, they're just incredible people that go out And yeah, we're raising funds. Right now we're doing something for a water well in Liberia that's going to basically serve about 300 people for average 20 years. And you know, 1 in 8 children under the age of 5 die in Liberia from waterborne illness. And it costs $10 per person to give that one person 20 years of fresh water with a well. So we're trying to basically help some people over there. And these guys are my heroes now because they're really living it and they're doing it. Some of them with modest means, some of them with a little bit more, but they just live the life of caring about others. And so check out reallifesuperheroes.com. You'll see who my friends are.
Absolutely. We have about 5 minutes left, and real quick, we're gonna talk about, I think one of the lessons you can learn from Ken's book, The Way of the Nerd, which you can see at thewayofthenerd.com, is that you learn things, I think, outside of school that are just as important as the things you learn, if not more important than the things you learn in school. I wonder if you guys could each share with us something you learned outside of the academic world that you still use today, or a lesson that helped and benefited your career.
My life that way, and that's why I work at the coolest company in the world right now, Titmouse, because all the people there are really friendly, and I can't think of another place that I would ever want to go work at. So usually now I'm like trying to branch into doing, like, I just shot my first horror movie with I vacillate back and forth between working in live action and working in animation, and so now I'm like trying to go real school, you know, whatever you want to call it, like, you know, I'm making features next year. So that's going to be fun for me. I miss doing it, but I've been trying to keep a hold of staying at Titmouse because I have so many friends that I work with now. It's like a little family. And that's what I would say is try to work with your friends. If you have a group of people who are really, really good with you, try to drag them into whatever you're doing. Like for me, I forced people that I knew in Chicago to move to LA to work on Metalocalypse. And it worked out for them. They ended up getting jobs, and they're all doing their own successful stuff now. And that would be my recommendation is allow people, you know, the people that you're with who are really cool, try to hold on to them and we'll try to work with them, because you'll work with people for, you know, 10, 15, 20 years, so, or longer, if you guys work out together.
That was so serious, it wasn't funny.
See, that's what it got me, the funny part.
I think it was dry. I thought it was hilarious.
Burger King. Look at Burger King, he's here!
Hungry. You ready? Go ahead.
No, hit it.
Yeah.
I mean, ditto, and I think you gotta have, and you gotta learn this the hard way sometimes, but you gotta have that passion, and you know, you gotta really like project and see yourself in a certain situation. For me, you know, I've always had this vision of you know, getting my work out there and spreading it, and being surrounded by good people is one of the things that helps you, put you in the right place at the right time, meeting the right people. But you gotta have that initial vision, and I don't think, you know, sometimes when you're young, it gets diluted, a lot of stuff going on in the world, but if you have that clear concept in your head, like of where you want to see yourself, and you know, the things you want to do, the people you want to meet, it can take you there. You know, I was a fan of George Lucas, and you know, thought I'd never meet him. And then I work at the Family Guy, and I'm recreating Star Wars posters, and I'm going to Lucasfilm, and you know, it was just dreaming, and it happened. Legally going. I'm not hopping fences.
I'm going to guess time is short because I heard the band over there for a second, so I'll just say there's really 3 simple things that I care about. One is just choose to be happy, first and foremost. After you've chosen to be happy, find something that is your absolute passion and do it whether you're getting paid or not. If it's your passion, if you're happy and you do what you love, that's more important than anything else. And then if you can make a living at it, that's all the better.
Yeah!
Listen, do your own math and learn from the stuff that you are missing. Create your own path with your own vision.